I deal with the feeling of rejection, that I let it pass through, and then I keep going.
So, hi everyone. I am so excited to introduce you to Amy Decker. She is an artist, and I'm lucky enough to be in her studio right now. This is some of her really incredible work that she was talking to me about. And then what you can't see is the rest of the studio, this like very well-lit studio. This is really great studio real estate. We're surrounded by really beautiful pieces of art. So thank you so much, Amy, for having me in your studio.
Thank you for being here.
So I know you. So we've been friends for quite some time. I was thinking about it this morning. I think we've been friends for like almost 10 years now.
At least, yeah.
And I'm really excited to talk to you. I've always, as I was thinking about doing this podcast, I've always had you in mind because I've had the honor of watching you, like watching your journey as an artist. Really, I mean, obviously it started much before we met, but this iteration and like to be here in your studio, you just graduated, you got your MFA, you're showing your work. Like I've really been able to witness the whole journey, and I've always loved your work and like so excited for you and so proud of you as a friend. And I'm so excited like for you to share your story with everyone here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. I have been thinking about and reflecting on how, some of our talks all along the way throughout the years have been encouraging and insightful. And you're someone who certainly have like informed my process, like to this day,
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, like it's been an interesting journey. So I'm glad that you're here in this time and space with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really magical. So I like to start from the beginning. And can you tell me a bit about like when you were a kid, like were you always creative? Were you always artistic? Like what kind of things were you interested in as a kid?
That's a great question. Well, I do know that drawing has always been a part of my life. I think from my earliest memories, maybe around 2.5, 3, I'm drawing at my mom's office she would take me there, or my grandfather would always have like drawing supplies when I would go stay with them. So there was always an opportunity to do that. And so it's something that I think I turned to from a very young age and was something I just carried along. It was just like, this is just something that I do. This is like a relationship that I have. And so that has been with me. And I've never really taken a significant break from it. And there weren't always drawings that were like meant to be seen by other people. It was more of some type of an internal processing kind of a thing. It was like very much a relationship with myself something about that needed to happen. It was like a necessary exercise or something, if you will. But yeah, it's been around for a long time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously there's a progression through like your journey as an artist, and something that I know about your work here that you like to do, and you were just sharing with me, is like you like to kind of write out your thoughts and like write like what's going on inside of you. Did you have that as a kid too? Like in terms of, like you said, like this relationship?
That's a good question too. Actually, I don't think like I call them word drawings now, but I think that came a little bit later, like maybe in adolescence and young adulthood and like my undergrad years, where I was more prone to journaling in general, and then kind of combine that with my visual art practice. But I think as a kid, what feels similar to my art practice now is the drawing process would kind of enable me to get into this frame of mind where I could listen to my inner life, and I would have that dialogue going, like my thoughts, my feelings, things I was excited about, interested in, fantasy as a kid, like it's superheroes or whatever, like magical creatures, whatever. But I would go there in my mind. I just wasn't writing that stuff out as part of the practice, but I was like, doing those like child drawings of figures and whatever. Sort of the imagination was more I would call it realism, but I was depicting life as I could, at the time. So yeah, the thought drawing stuff didn't come till later.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And so, where do I want to go from here? So we actually went to the same college,
Did.
and not quite at the same time.
Yeah.
I think it was a little after you.
Yeah.
But so after high school, you moved to New York?
Yeah. Summer of 99.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
You went to School of Visual Arts?
I did. And I think we studied the same thing, graphic design. The first year is the foundation year with all the fine art practices, which I loved. And then you have your curriculum the following 3 years. Yeah.
What made you choose graphic design?
I think a couple things. I think at the time I was inclined, I knew in high school that I wanted to pursue art. I had a neighbor who was an artist, and she was also she had this myriad career of various careers where she did prop styling and set design, and one of the things was graphic design. And I remember in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, that's a way that I could sort of be practical and be an artist. There was this it was sort of a dream to focus solely on artwork. I didn't think that would be something that I was permitted to consider at the time, at that age. And for many years after, actually, I sort of thought I needed to have something that could fit into sort of a commercialized space. So I think that was in part why I chose graphic design. But there was also the side of me that was curious about it because as an art form, because there were students from my high school who had gone to SVA who came back and talked to us about it. And they were, some of them were animators and some of them were graphic designers. And I was interested in their work and their thought process. And I thought it was exciting. So that's also went into the decision at the time. I mean, it's you're a kid. I don't know how you can decide this is what I want to do. That was the best I could come up with.
Yeah.
Which was great at the time. I thought, yeah, it was a wonderful program.
I think it's also knowing someone who's an artist or someone who does art early on and what does that look like? Because I think it's kind of a mystery and it feels so out of place. Or for me, it was I call her my great aunt. She's not quite my great aunt, but it doesn't really matter. My uncle's mother was an artist and she painted on silk and I think about, there's great museums in Rochester where I grew up and everything, but I grew up deep in the suburbs, you know what I mean? And there wasn't a lot of art talk or, that kind of world. And so she was my introduction to it. So it is I think there's something there that holds on to that, oh, okay, this is really interesting. And kind of really opens up the door to okay, what could this look like? And, prop design, set design and stuff okay, you could do this and make a living. And it's kind of grounded in reality.
Right. Yeah. It does help to have those markers, to have people living the experience that you're maybe going to consider. Because otherwise it felt too remote, thinking of, stories that you heard in school growing up about Van Gogh or other artists and what their lives were like. And it just was too much of a jump to imagine how could I possibly do that. So,
right. Yeah. It just feels, I think for me too, I didn't even, I had her and I really liked talking with her. And I thought her world was very interesting. She lived close to New York City. Mm-hmm. She went to the ballet every year. She read the New York Times. She was an artist. She showed her work and stuff like that. I was really fascinated by it. But I think proximity is so important too, because otherwise it feels like I always fantasized about living in New York, but I never thought I would actually do it because it was that's not even an option. So I think and you having kids who came back who went to SVA to talk to you guys. Yeah. I thought someone came to my high school from the Art Institute. So I was okay, that's an option or whatever. But right. So anyway, so you study graphic design at SVA. It's a good program. Yeah, highly recommend if you really like graphic design. So yeah, I was there while you were at SVA, were you kind of working on any artwork during that time, or were you really just focused on design?
Very much not focused on design. I think I think that was where I really tapped into that part of me that knew it wanted to make artwork all the time. And so I focused somewhat on design. That's not entirely true. I definitely had a portfolio, but my heart was in like these drawing classes I would sit in on. I took them, and then I asked if I could sit in on them in ensuing semesters. And I just like loved it. I loved being immersed in those fine art classes. And then I had my own personal practice going all the time. And I would try to find ways to weave that into the design projects I was doing. A lot of the time it helped to have like sort of music packaging design projects going so that I could like infuse them with my, whatever kind of wild vision my artist practice wanted to, have be a part of it. So it was kind of like, I definitely realized I was struggling to just be a graphic designer. I could see my peers who really loved it and like were thriving, and I admired it so much, what they were doing. But I knew for me, like the itch that wanted to be scratched was the like painter, drawer, collager thing. And so most of my design work I was trying to like find a way to merge the two.
Yeah. Knowing your work, I feel like that makes a bit of sense too. And so what did you do after you graduated SVA?
Yeah, 2003. Well, so I had another job while I was a student. I modeled. So for a number of years I did that, and after school as well. And alongside that, I met, some creative folks, and one of whom was a fashion designer, and she had her own label going in the city. And so she worked out something with me where I would work with her part-time. And so she gave me kind of a window into that type of design. So it's like, there was some little maybe graphic design projects with her every once in a while for like our lookbooks or like some type of season kind of marketing type stuff. But for the most part, what I got from that experience, I got so much from that experience with her, but she taught me about, color and sort of, what do I want to say, composition of prints, like print design. And I thought, it was through conversations and working with her where I learned how, that I might be interested in pursuing that as a career instead of, because I did do some, I shouldn't say I didn't do any, but I did do some. I like interned at a magazine for a while, which I was grateful to do that. It was sort of more creative leaning, and I did some freelance work here and there in graphic design, but it was mostly the modeling. And then when I started working with this fashion designer, she suggested I pursue print design, like textile, fabric, surface. So I started taking night classes a couple of years into that process to learn how to do that, and how does it, how do I incorporate like my love of drawing into something else that could be even more specifically like suited to what I like to do, so that's kind of what that looks like. And so the first 5 years out of school was kind of like figuring that out, and then I landed there, and that's been was my career for like 15 whatever years up until and including now. To still do that part of the time.
And then this is, I feel like that in this period we became friends, and I got to know you and stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I would love to hear about is, so we would have conversations, we'd see each other all the time, go out to dinner and stuff. And first of all, you would show me your notebooks and stuff, and you had your artwork in notebooks, right? And you were drawing and stuff. And I remember like us having conversations of you, like it just kind of came out over time, like you really wanted to do this.
Yeah.
Like you really wanted to create your art. So like, talk to me about, okay, so you're in your career and you're doing like textile design, you're working in CAD and whatnot. Was there like a moment or a night or a day or like some kind of memory where you're like that was kind of a moment of like, all right, I'm gonna take a more serious step forward in terms of like doing this art thing?
Yeah. I wish I could say there was like one aha moment and I, did a 180 and started taking immediate actions to change my life. But I sort of move, like my ship turns more slowly, I found. So, or turning the ship that I'm on, it's like it's a very slow process, at least up until this point. But, the gradual sort of realization that I wanted my art practice to be more at the forefront of my life started to come. It was like cumulative, right, over a series of years, and alongside that, like parallel to it, like my life experiences were kind of shaping this awareness, maybe that I need to like reprioritize that relationship with myself as an artist and keep that at the front of everything, as like the most important relationship, more or less, for a primary one, I should say, because it hadn't been. It like I had been sort of always still drawing and making things, but I was, making things for people as gifts, but I wasn't sharing my work as an artist with other artists. I wasn't in dialogue. I wasn't dedicating myself to a devoted like studio practice, like a regular practice. It was more of a one-off when I have time, but it was pretty regular. It was like maybe not every day, but pretty regular practice for me all these years. But I just, I could tell that I was like putting it on the back burner and I needed it to be, like I said, at the front. So I want to say like, let's see, we're almost at 2024. I want to say about 10 years ago was when these kind of inner promptings started pulling at me. There were a few things that happened, shifted in my life. I changed from sort of what felt like, I changed into like still doing the textile design, but I shifted into a job where I wasn't, it was a much calmer work environment, and I had a little more mental space available as a result to listen to those inner promptings. And so that was like the start of the ship turning. A few other things happened, like, some loved ones passed away who had been like instrumental in my life, and a few other things like that around that time began this desire for me to really kind of recognize, like, you don't have forever here. And what do I want to do with the time I have? And the thing that's always been with me as long as I can remember is take yourself seriously as an artist. Like, keep this relationship primary. And so I started that then. I started drawing more regularly, and then it slowly led to other things like telling more people in my life about my work, and including, friends who were artists that I kept this information from for various reasons, I guess. I just wasn't ready to step into the role, I guess. But I eventually, listened to people who suggested things here and there, like taking classes again at night. And, since I had this job that I could leave and feel a little less of an emotional burden or tie to, I had my nights that felt free, so I started pursuing painting classes again. It was suggested I take up a critique group and start bringing the work I already had to other people, and start listening to other people who are artists talk about their work and talk about mine and participate. And so I started doing that. And that was what's been happening over the past 10 years, like slowly but surely. Like, my community has expanded, and this desire, once I prioritized the relationship and it's a daily practice now, I made a room in my home, a studio, before coming here, like several years ago. And like, once it's taken on, more of a life, then I'm like realizing, oh, I feel fulfilled by this. This is what I need to do. Then I started thinking about school. So it was like, going back to school for an MFA, that became part of it. But, in 2014, I wasn't thinking these things and I'm going to do this. It was like a very slow, sort of gradual process. And it kind of came from just thinking, like, what kind of life do you want to live? I have the privilege to even ask that question, So I might as well take advantage of like trying to live more fully, stepping more into myself, because also, yeah, I mean, that's how you're best of service in life anyway, right? I'm finding, like, I thought I was like, if I sort of had this, this idea of what life should look like, and if I could check all those boxes off, like a career, of this or that, a home, then I would have done my job, but whatever that means. But I started to realize, like, that's not how I'm going to find meaning. I'm going to find meaning from listening to my inner life, and trying to like take that out into the world and connect with other people from there, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah. I think it's human nature. Like, we all have that thought. I have that thought of, like, when I'm making X amount of money and I'm here in my career and I have my partner and my secure home and everything, then I'll do X, Y, Z, or feel happy or know that I've succeeded or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've found, like, that stuff has come into my life and gone, and come back and go, it's really, it's something like I've talked a lot about with people that I've, interviewed on the podcast this week, is a lot of this like underlying spiritual practice and a lot of like spiritual principles with being a creative and like being in it for the work and not for the glory or the money or the whatever prestige or whatever. Cause a lot of that stuff like may never come, may not come definitely is not coming in our timeline and stuff like that. So, that totally makes sense. And there's a few things that I want to kind of underline about what you said. And that maybe there wasn't like a white light moment. Maybe there wasn't like a crystal clear 180. And I think that's normal with a lot of people. It's a slow progression, right? Yeah. And that's something that happened in my career too. Is like I was like working at design agencies and working crazy hours and feeling very burnt out. And then slowly being like, this ain't it. This is not, I'm not saving anyone's life. Yeah. Why am I at the office at 3 a.m? Yeah. And it kind of went from like, my job being up here in terms of like priority and time and energy, and my artwork or my creative work down here. Over years, it did this, right? And so I think that's true for a lot of people, because we can't, like we have bills to pay and shit, right? Like there's responsibilities that we have, and we can't just say bye, you know what I mean? All this stuff takes time and also us, right? To like get to a place where like we can commit more to the art and whatnot. And I think like slow progress is beautiful and fantastic.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. Like, and I see it at work in your life and in other people's lives, like who make these transitions. And there's something else that I was just thinking of about, we still have to show up for the bills, et cetera, and participate in our life in that way, while our creative work may or may not be, taking off financially in a financially supportive role. But I was also thinking like just now that, the sort of nice thing is that if one is feeling fulfilled, like if I'm having that sensation, then it can inform any other space I'm in. So if I'm in that 9-to-5 job, like while I'm also pursuing my artwork, the idea or the goal for me is to feel like this satisfaction, this level of like peace and or like fulfillment that I'm having, I can bring it there. I can bring it to that job, even if that job is not, I'm not making these like wacky drawings or like the wood panel paintings or whatever else I'm doing at that job specifically, but I can bring the sort of joy that I have that I'm cultivating to the best of my ability to this other, space. And so it doesn't have to be like all or nothing. Like, oh, that's the place that I go like close the door on and like, die for 8 hours. It's like, no, that's the place that I get to carry this life that I'm building with back to there. I don't always know how that translates, but I'd like to think that like a day at a time, little awakenings will happen, or I'll have this, like I said, joy to like share there somehow. I do think when I'm in like a more fulfilled frame of mind, I'm more open to being, I don't know, like problem solving and creative problem solving kind of comes more easily, etc. So that's just something else that came to mind.
Yeah, I think again, it goes back to like some spiritual principles, but also like honoring ourselves and what we need, you know, and when I, you know, take care of myself, I get a good night's sleep, I set boundaries, whether it at work or in personal relationships or whatnot, I'm exerting energy in my creativity. You know what I mean? Like basically, AKA like I'm taking care of myself. I do show up.
Yeah.
I'm a nicer person on the subway. I'm a nicer person at work. You know, like I'm more present for my relationships in my life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think about there was a period where all of that was out of whack and I was working a lot and it just felt like I was just like constantly just eating shit at work and just like, you know, just like, yep, I'm right on top of that rose and, you know, and not setting boundaries and whatnot. And you know, I would come home exhausted. I would be not a nice girlfriend to my boyfriend at the time, you know, like my hair was falling out. It was just like, it wasn't working. And even now, like when I do contract work and stuff, you know, I have this one client, I've been with them on and off for 5 years. You will not hear me say a bad thing about them. And I love to talk shit. I love to complain. Complaining is my love language. But like I love them and they're lovely and fantastic. But I think too, it's like I'm doing my thing, right? Like I'm like scratching my creative itch. You know, I'm taking better care of myself. I know exactly, you know, like our roles as like contractor, you know, employer or whatever is very well defined, you know, in terms of like time and commitment and everything like that. And it's like, okay, we're good. This is working for everybody.
Yeah.
So you're slowly like over time, things are kind of, you're getting more invested in your artwork and whatnot. And I want to, a very like, I don't, again, like, it's not like a specific time or moment, but I remember you considering going back to school, going to graduate school for fine art and having conversations with you. And there was a period of time where like, I could see like, it was like, maybe, you know, like, you know, it felt very far away and then you just moved closer towards it. And then you actually did it. Can you like how, you know, for people who were like, I want to do these things, you know, like maybe go back to school or have a studio or invest more of their life into their creativity. How did you like take those steps to like get an MFA and also to like get to where you're at today?
I do remember initially looking up programs. I mean, I think I started maybe in 2016 looking, and I went on a few info sessions in person, you know, to different programs. I was considering like art therapy at the time. I had the hunger for an MFA fine arts, but I was like, how do I, you know, I was still sort of thinking, what else can I explore? So I did that. I went to a few different info sessions at schools around the city, and I started researching other programs. And then I started researching MFA fine arts solely out of state and here. And I started kind of doing some calculations of how much would this cost and would I be able to have at the time I had that full-time job, and how would I do this? And I kind of shut down. I wasn't ready. I didn't have maybe the energetic capacity for the change at the time, but it had started something and it gotten me on several schools' mailing lists. And so I was receiving information and emails on a somewhat regular basis for the next several years to remind me, you know, that this was something that I had looked into, and I could certainly unsubscribe from these programs and emails, but I didn't. And something about that, kind of having that reminder while I was pursuing a regular studio practice and showing up at critique group and starting to take night painting classes at the Art Students League was one thing, because it was like something I had this, so I didn't shut out that dream, basically, is what I'm getting at about the education. I just said, okay, I looked into it. I was a little freaked out by it, not ready to take that leap just yet, but it's still in the back of my mind. And then I talked to another friend who had like a New Year's party, and she had been taking classes at the Art Students League, a painter friend, and she invited me to visit her and meet her teacher. And so I did that. I just started like showing up to events like this or experiences like this. And I thought, well, I can do that. I can show up a couple nights a week and see what happens, and sort of slowly enroll in a program or in classes again. And after a couple of years of that, I had felt the desire to be more immersed in a program, but I still wasn't quite ready to accept or leap into a full-time program because I had worked since I got out of school. So I thought, I don't know, my brain couldn't compute how that would possibly happen. But a few things changed. I was still working through the pandemic, but the nature of the small business I was at kind of shifted, and there was more space for me to be able to have time to consider doing a program. I found out through asking other people, other artists, like about different types of MFA programs. And I found out about low residency, which at the time I had not really explored. And so I looked into a few of those programs, and I did an online info session during the pandemic time, like sort of the early months of it. And I really liked this program that was based out of Cambridge, which ended up Lesley University, the school I went to, where you completed a series of residencies on site, but you did work at home, and you had a home studio practice and an academic practice, and you had an advisor and a mentor that you worked with in between the residencies. And so I thought I could potentially do this because a few things lined up. I had been at this job for a period of time. I had a little bit of vacation time, and I could use that to put towards the residencies. So I started. It was like, at first I thought, no, I should wait until we see what happens with the pandemic. But then it was right around my birthday, I think, or sometime like thinking about like turning 39 or something. I was coming up on that birthday, and I had this couple of conversations with people, and including the director of this program, this low residency MFA program. And I sat on it, and I really, my part of my mind that doesn't like taking risks and that is afraid and sort of looking out to protect me, but really sometimes stifles me, was trying to convince me to just table it. And I thought, you know what? I've been tabling it for a few years. I have the resources. I could potentially do this with the current employment situation I have. Now's the time, And so I used that little burst of energy. I first said no, and then I said, okay, I'm going to apply. And I did it, and I got in, and I was able to get some help, some scholarship money. And I just I kind of leapt into the process in the program and was able to kind of devote all of my outside of work time to this, and loved it, and so much gratitude for it. And then a year and a half or so into it, I realized like maybe I could ask the company I've been working at for freelance opportunities so that I have a little bit more time and a little more flexibility since they don't need me as much. And so I did that. And then that kind of changed into me doing contract work so that I could finish the MFA sort of a little bit more on my terms with a little bit more flexibility. And I've maintained the contract position. We'll see how that works out. But, it's sort of where I'm at so that I'm able to have time here. I mean, it's still a risk that I don't feel comfortable taking, even though I'm taking it, if that makes sense. And it's a little scary, but it's I don't know, feels very much worthy, of that. Like the risk feels like it feels worth it to do it.
Yeah. There's a few things that you said in there of, that having that conversation with yourself, and you're like, well, when is the right time going to be? Right. And something that I try not to say anymore. And I hear a lot of other creatives when they're hemming and hawing about, should I jump? Should I not? Is let me figure it out. Like, let me sit and think about it.
Yeah.
And stuff. And I was talking with a friend who's also a creative, and they want to explore this new area. And he's like, well, I've really got to think about it. And I was like, how long have you been thinking about it? And he was like, since college. And I was like, that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So what else do you need to figure out, you know? And really it's just like you were saying, like, we're protecting ourselves, right? And I think especially with creatives and with artists, it is fucking risky.
Yeah.
You know, it feels very risky, right? Society doesn't really support the idea of like being able to invest in your creativity and whatnot. And it's also like putting out a piece of you into the world that can sometimes feel very like intimate and very vulnerable, right? Yeah. And but anyways, I love that you just had this moment and you just like, let me go. Yeah. Let me go like apply, you know, like let me put my application out there. This episode is brought to you by the Creator Jump Off community. You're a creative who's running a side hustle and you feel super overwhelmed and confused by everything you have to do. I have something real awesome for you. It's called the Creator Jump Off community, and it's built to help you feel organized, focused, and empowered so you can hit your business goals this year. This is not a get-rich-quick thing. It's legit business training, community, and coaching, all taken from my experience as a creative entrepreneur for over 15 years. Life is too short to make art that you hate. Come check out the Creator Jump Off community and see how you can kickstart a profitable side hustle starting today. Go to nataliemertz.com/creatorjumpoff to learn more. You know, and also I love too, I think that there's something in it, like there's something in life about, or I'm a little woo-woo and, you know, I think about energy and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You just kept saying yes to things. And maybe you weren't ready for the big yes of like, let me go apply to grad school, like let me get into grad school. But you like went to visit your friend's studio and you went to crits. Yeah. And you were just saying yes to things that felt a little easier that eventually, like it sounds to me, laddered up to, let me apply for, you know, graduate school.
Yeah, very much that. And it's you kind of, it's like getting in water, you know, like, and that's a challenging temperature to get into, hot or cold, you know, kind of gradually easing in sometimes. And then eventually you have to, you make a decision. You either have to get in all the way or you're going to back out. And I just knew that I wouldn't back out. I still won't. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I don't want to say anything sort of negative, but you know, you don't know what's going to happen. But I think I reached a point where I just felt comfortable taking the leap of faith, you know, and seeing how things would go and knowing that I had enough life experience that if something didn't work out, I would know how to like pack up and move on, you know, I just would. It would be okay. Yeah. And it's good to remember that.
Yes. Yeah. Still to this day.
Even though it may not have to even come to that. There is that part of my brain that's like, please reassure me. Yeah. Please let me know your contingency plan. You know, if I can't help it, it's still there. Yeah. Maybe someday I can't help it, but
I think too, you know, like our journeys are very similar. It's like slow, you know what I mean? Like it's slow and consistent progress towards what we want, you know, and something that I love about like talking to artists and stuff and talking to you is like, let's take a moment and like celebrate and appreciate like that you're here. You know what I mean? Like that you also like, so you did end up going to graduate school. Yeah. You graduated.
I did.
Made it through this year?
Last January. So it's been almost a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also love you found a situation that worked for you. Or maybe another way to put it is the situation found you. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you were able to negotiate with work. You asked for what you needed from them, which can be scary, but it's like what's the worst thing they could say? No. Yeah. You know, you made it work and you did it. You got your MFA a year ago. You have your own studio now, which I know was another big hurdle for you. Yeah. And so talk to me about like where you're at now. Like, did you say that you're getting ready for a show?
We have a show. So some of my MFA cohort and I are to put together a group show up in at a prep school in Massachusetts where my friend teaches, the Governor's Academy. She's teaches in the art department there and has been for a number of years. And it's a beautiful space. And we just hung the show, I want to say 2 weeks ago, and it's up until January. So we're doing a closing reception in January and then like a kind of panel discussion and Q&A with the students, which I'm looking forward to. And I still have the studio and I'm really grateful for the space. Initially, I shared it with a friend, another painter who was someone that I met through the CRIC group, that sort of like family of artists that I kept seeing every time we would meet and kind of get to know them and their work. And so sharing the space with her for the first year was really exciting, or I would say more inspiring, and it was really, that helped to make, to facilitate taking this leap of faith. It was like that relationship and sort of seeing her stuff in the space. And I would come in on the days that I was here, and then she would be here on the days, that she had. And it was just nice to be in an environment versus being at home, being in a space where someone else's work is up and you see them going through their process, whatever that is. And kind of like fed mine in a way too. And now, she's moved on, but I have this space here. And so I continue my practice here. I have this space 4 days a week that I come to. I mean, I could come more, but I work the other 3 and very grateful for that configuration for now. But yeah, that's that group show. And then there was another small group show just outside of Philly that I participated in back in September, and an alumni show back over the summer from my MFA program. So it's nice to be able to share my work. I love doing that. I love it when people want to have it in their homes. Like it's very, like it touches me, it's because it's like these things that, you spend these months with these, like poring over these things. And then this person that I may or may not know has these pieces that I've spent time with, has like a part of me. And then it's sort of just a reminder of like the fabric of humanity in a way, and your participation in it, so that it's not like it was for me 20 years ago or 15 years ago, before I had more of a community, more of a integrated practice where I was just kind of drawing and keeping it to myself at home, and here and there gifting people little drawings, for birthdays or whatever. Now I feel like, I can be more present in life with this. There's like, again, participation in that fabric of humanity, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. Amy makes the best birthday cards, by the way. I have many amazing collaged Amy birthday cards, and I'll hold on to them forever because they're like these little works of art.
Aww.
They are so sweet. Okay, so that brings me to a question. Mm-hmm. And I always think about, like, I'm, my whole life is in transition right now. And and I was saying to Lauren, I say it to you, like, I can't wait to like be grounded and whatnot. And so I can be in a place to purchase some artwork from you, because I adore your work. And also it means a lot to me, not just because I love, I'll love whatever artwork that I buy from you, but to me, it'll be like a symbolism like of our friendship and whatnot. And it's so deep. And you're right. It is like this beautiful kind of, full circle, and it is such an intimate thing. And I want to ask you, like, I think a lot of artists and creatives, myself included, have these thoughts of like, who cares about this stuff? Like, who's going to give a shit? Like, why would anyone care about what I have to say as an artist or about my work and stuff like that?
Yeah.
So how do you have that kind of like negative self-talk about your art and stuff? And like, how do you make peace with it? Do you make peace with it? Like, what does that relationship look like?
Yeah, that voice. Well, I wonder if mine shows up slightly differently. I think the voice that has most, voice that I have to contend with that's sort of more negatively bent is the one that's, what are you doing? Or this isn't going to work out, and you're just, going to dig a hole for yourself, that kind of thing. Excuse me. It's not so much of like, who cares about this? Because I kind of already imagine that no one like it's okay if no one cares. I say that and I mean it at this point in my life to some extent. I mean, perhaps I can say that more comfortably just because what I was looking for all along, I've finally been able to give myself, which is I care. I care, and I'll do whatever I need to do to continue to show the part of myself, like, look, I care, and we're here. And if you need to spend the rest of your life doing this, I will find whatever way to do it. And if we can support ourselves with it, wonderful. If we can't, I'll find another way to be able to take care of us. It's like very much like there's like feels like I'm in a relationship with something that that I'm answering to. And so in that way, I don't feel quite as concerned about whether or not someone else likes it. I suppose based on my experience though, because I have had some positive feedback over the years, whether it was people I gave cards to or people who've come in and into my life and done studio visits, and there is some level, like I do enjoy when there's some level of somebody feeling engaged or interested or delighted with the work. That is really nice if that happens. If it doesn't happen, and it doesn't always happen, that's also okay. Mm-hmm. I don't think that would deter me from making this, because I think, like I sort of just mentioned, the most important thing is that I'm doing it and I love it and I need to make it happen. So I'm sure like there is a part of me that's like, who cares about this? And it's fine. Like, I don't know that I battle with that. I think it's okay if no one cares. There's a ton of rejections. People talk about that, like applying for residencies and grants and shows. I've had so many rejections, and it's okay. I deal with the feeling of rejection, but I let it pass through, and then I keep going. And I don't deny that I wish I could participate more, but there's a part of me that's like, if it's meant to happen, it will happen. The important thing is that I just keep showing up and I keep participating in the way that I can in this fabric of humanity and the world or whatever, and trust that things will land when and how and if they need to, and that I don't have to be too worried or too controlling about how that all pans out. I think going back to school at the time that I did, like in my early 40s, like kind of gave me this permission. I had this permission. I was so relieved. Part of me and maybe all of me is so relieved to finally just be like doing this and then loving it, doing this art practice and loving it, that whatever people said to me, I could take it in and try to learn from it. I'm thinking in critiques, whether it's positives, leaning or negative or whatever, adjective you want to attribute it to. Like, I felt so relieved that I was doing this, that it was all kind of like, it was all extra. It just felt like, okay, this is all good information, any of it. Whereas maybe in art school, when I was younger, there was a little bit more of a concern that I needed to have some level of approval from the outside, whatever that was, earthlings, people, professors, people I was working for, whatever. So I guess, that's the sort of where I land with all that stuff for now. It could change. I see friends of mine that have more exposure with their work, and I want to maintain some level of humility that these things change. And just because I'm riding this wave of feeling so much gratitude for the fact that I do have an art practice that I devote to, that I don't really worry too much about what happens or doesn't happen to it. Like, I'm sure that can change, but for now, I'm grateful that I'm just pretty content and happy to be doing this.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think just hoping for the best but keep working, you know what I mean? Like keep moving forward regardless. Like, been thinking a lot about like the podcast and stuff, and I want as many people to see it and hear it. And I think like your story is so valuable, and everyone that I've been talking to, there's so much value there. And similar to like community in your own life, like hearing and seeing other people doing what you want to do, or just being even one or two steps ahead of you, is so valuable to be like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. You know what I mean? Like if this is how they figured it out, I can, work it out as well.
Yeah.
What else do I want? Okay. So another question that I have, so you're here 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Cool. And so talk to me about like, I've not really asked you about your artwork, but I have one more like process question because I want to make sure. I think another hurdle that a lot of people experience too is like the motivation or like being consistent and like showing up and like doing the work regularly. It seems to me you have a good flow and you seem like you're excited to come into the studio. Yeah. Is that true? And like, is there times where you're just like, ugh, I don't want to look at this right now. I don't want to do this.
Not yet. I think again, because so many years of kind of neglect maybe is the right term, or the one I can access right now of my practice were happening, like I sidelined it so much that I feel delighted and interested and curious, even if I kind of still feel stumped about some of it. I still come in here, and I have this very real sense that this space is not mine forever. I don't know if I would like to continue coming here, but like for the time I have, like, let me get here and do it. It's the sort of feeling that I have. And I'm trying to like make that a little less fear-based and more like, oh, we have this space and sort of enjoy it, while I have it, rather than what if I don't have it? I better show up there as often as I can. So I'm trying to shift my thinking and feeling and acting to more positive one. But yeah, I don't yet feel discouraged or uninterested or any of that about this. Like I'm really happy to get to show up here. Again, I think it's just because of the time that I didn't have something like this and then finally did, that I just feel like I'm off to the races with it. I mean, it doesn't mean I always feel like a success in here. I measure that differently at different times, but I'm happy to come here and, Friday through Monday, make as much of that time that I have.
Yeah. I will say it has great energy in here.
It's nice.
It feels so good in here. Nice. You have great light. And also just like seeing this in my periphery, it just like the colors are so like fun and warm and gorgeous. Like it, I want to hang out in here 4 days a week for sure.
I'm glad you feel that way. Yeah.
So I want to talk about your art now. I want to, and so we were talking a little bit before we were recording, and you were talking me through some paintings that you were working on. But what's the process for making a piece? Like, you come up with an idea, or do you just start and see where it goes? Like, just talk me through like how you create your art.
Thank you for that question. I think all the few different types of work I engage in, like there's like a certain type of drawing, and a couple different types of paintings that I tend to do. They like fall into these little categories, but I think you could say that they sort of start from the same kind of frame of mind, and it's not that dissimilar from the work, the drawings I was doing as a little kid. These like, oh, I have all these thoughts and feelings, and and this is how I process them, or engage them, or, like I have to like draw it out. And that's kind of what's happening to this day, at least as far as I can understand. So I don't necessarily have a thought, oh, I want to make a particular thing, or, my work is largely not representational. There are elements that sneak in here and there, but I don't have a set theme necessarily, or like, oh, I'm really frustrated, I need to make a this or that. I guess I would say in general, it's more of a like, I heard, what was it? My MFA program director said, like the discharge of the nervous system. Like some of the work feels like that. And some of it, it's just like, again, like that little kid with paper and the pens and the pencils and whatever and drawing. It's like, have this interior experience, that I want to just kind of like work it out with implements on paper or paper mounted on panels, or, a little bit here and there of canvas or larger pieces of paper, like those seem to be the places that I land on when it comes to making work.
And I know sometimes you have words, in your work, but not always, right? Not always. Talk to me about that. Like what are those words? Like what is that? What is that part of some of your artwork?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm still uncovering it. That actually, what we talked about a little bit earlier when you first got into the studio, similar, like a kind of a download of information. Something that I started, I think, at my days at SVA, actually, just doing those word drawings where I kind of had these thoughts and or little snippets of conversations I heard or things I wanted to remember or pieces from literature I'd been reading or whatever. And I just would kind of like weave the letters together in a way, sometimes intricately and sometimes not, just block lettering and kind of coloring in the spaces or leaving some spaces so they would become these like, sort of shape forms made out of letters. And I do that as not the start of every piece. Like these kind of pastel drawings don't usually include that, typography or words or letters for whatever reason. These are more, before I was writing type of thing. These feel more like the kid who goes and sits down with her things and just needs to like tell the story, whatever that story may be. But with the word ones, that's definitely more of a like nervous system discharge, like getting out ideas or just kind of giving my head some breathing room and then trying to use those to help me process emotional content or something.
Do you feel relief after you do that?
I don't know.
I'm like, should I do that? That sounds like a lovely therapeutic process.
Well, so there is this idea in psychology of task positive interaction between your mind and your hand, more or less. Like you're doing these methodical, maybe, or like, you can have it with knitting, you can have it with building something. I have it with drawing, and more specifically, the word drawings, like getting these ideas out on paper. And so, yes, in a sense, over time, a couple of hours of doing this, I start to feel some type of relief and kind of a grounding or centering. And then, from there, I'll like cut those shapes out and then decide if I want to collage them in or project them onto a larger, like I'm pointing behind you, there are these larger pieces of paper that I project those. And then, at that point, I got the kind of information out of me. So I don't need the words or the letters to make sense so much anymore, because it's like the things that they were like haunting me with or troubling me with or harassing me, like it's almost been processed through the drawing. So I guess in a sense, it does give me some sense of relief. And then I'm free to do with them whatever I want. Usually I flip them over because it's not like I want someone to really, at least as far as I understand, read through this mishigas in my brain. It's like this stuff, it's not that important. The important thing for me is to get it out, to make it into this like blob that I cut out these shapes, and then I can like do something else with it. It's like a process thing. It's just something that it's just how like I digest emotional information. And then, then it becomes like the basis of, and it just becomes these architectural elements then for the rest of the piece that I'm doing. It's like parts of the map on the wood panel painting,
Yeah.
And no longer these like ideas that won't leave me alone, or these thoughts, or this thing that someone said, or, sometimes it's positive stuff, but it just like, I get it out of my head is the plan. So I guess, yes, there is some level of relief.
Yeah, I do something not with beautiful artwork, but like I do something similar for like a brain dump. Because sometimes I just like thoughts just feel like pinballs in my head, and they don't go anywhere. It's just like pay rent, or like got to call this person or whatever, and it just won't leave me alone.
Yeah.
And like it's almost, I call it, it's really kind of grotesque, but like a bloodletting, like a thought letting. You know what I mean? Where it's just like I just get it out of my head. It's like, okay, I have it written down or whatever. Like, so that kind of that process in your artwork reminds me of that.
Yeah. It sounds like I like that bloodletting, thought letting.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Just getting
like relief. Because it's like, in a sense, you can't repress these things. I think maybe some people can. I haven't figured out a way to do that successfully. So there's got to be some kind of process. They've got to be exercised out. And yeah, the writing it down seems to be powerful. And then when I can do something else where I incorporate it into a final like art piece, it's almost like it's lost its power. It's just like this like balloon that kind of like, putters away, like all the air comes out of it and it just becomes this like limp little thing. And then I can just like slap it on a painting and like put it to use somehow.
Yeah. That's beautiful. You're recycling your thoughts.
I like that.
It's very,
think of it that way.
It's very eco-friendly what you're doing there.
It almost feels empowering in a way.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm in control, because I think that's what I was probably searching for a while, like how to manage the mind that I came here with. It's like still learning how to do that.
Yeah. And that this seems like such a beautiful process through it, and I think obviously it looks very different for everyone, how they do that, whether that's in like therapy or like my brain dump or whatever, and stuff. And like, that's really cool. Like you kind of incorporated into your artistic practice.
I'm glad it sort of showed me that that's what I could do, because I don't think I thought that. I don't think I thought, oh, I'm going to, it wasn't conscious. This is what I'm going to do. It just sort of happened through my process of drawing, that then these word things came, it sort of like just happened through the process of doing and making. And I think so many artists talk about that. Like they learn through the doing of things. Like, anyway.
Yeah. I think there's so much value to like getting out of your head.
Yeah.
Right. And like, talking to another artist this week about that, of like dropping it to like your heart or like your gut, right? Mm-hmm. And like just being in that flow and stuff. There's so much information in there.
Yeah.
Because sometimes sometimes I just have a pinball bouncing around. It's not making any sense. It's not saying anything intelligent.
Yeah.
It's just driving me fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And that's when I know it's time to get busy doing something. And for me, it's like writing or talking with someone or like getting active in my creative practice.
Yeah.
And that like calms that crisp pinball.
Yeah. The thought machine, pinball machine. Yeah.
So as of today, so we talked about a lot of like these really amazing leaps that you've taken over time and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so what is a goal or something that you're really looking forward to right now?
Oh, well. That's a good question. I feel like I've said that a lot. I don't know. I think at present, I don't have something that feels specific. I think so I can speak to like some of the immediate ideas that I would like to exercise here and follow through with, because I don't know, I don't have like a sort of a clear desire, I want to teach, or I want to move to a specific location and work from there, or I don't have that just yet. I think my first year of school, like one of the things that I was sort of distilling from this experience is like, I'm still very much learning about myself as an artist, even at 42. I'm still like learning where the work wants me to go next. And so my goals are really more centered around that. Like the insights that I gleaned from my time in the MFA and the previous years leading up to it of devoting myself to this practice, like have brought me to making the work that I'm making now. But I'm curious and interested in where that work is evolving to next. And so I feel very much invested in that process and sort of like I can feel like something, like I'm struggling a little, like I can feel like something else is going to come, but I'm not quite there yet. So I'm curious about the evolution of my work, and that is, I don't know that it's a goal, but it's sort of like a continual. It's a continued interest, and I suppose to support that, my goals would be around that, like to find ways to keep up my studio practice and or having a space outside of home to house and facilitate the work. So that's something that's like a present sort of goal and or thing I would like to maintain. And alongside this as well, it would be, looking at residency programs, which I am, to see if there's one that I can get into and really spend some time away from New York and devote, more energy into this practice, and possibly, participate in community activities if they happen to have something like that. Like there are sometimes opportunities to lead workshops with these things, with these residencies. So those are sort of immediate ideas that I feel interested in pursuing right now. But in terms of like big time goals, I do not know. I don't know that I have one. I certainly would like to share my work more. I'd like to keep having studio visits and keep doing, that's something that's been an important part of the last several years, like going to other artist studios and having them come to mine. I would like to continue that, and certainly showing the work more. Certainly. I would like to continue doing that too, outside of just studio visits. So finding spaces where the work can be a part of. I think that's something on view. I think that's like, I sold a few pieces of work this summer to a school and up in Massachusetts, and they have it in like a guest lecture room. So the people, it's in, I forget the name of the space, but it's it's a dormitory building in Harvard, and they have lecturers come and the work is in this space. And so I would like to be able to do things more like that, where the work can just show up in different venues, and that's its new home. And so those are my, like, I don't know if you call them goals, but like things I am aspiring to right now, I guess. Yeah.
I love that. And congratulations. That's really cool.
Yeah, I was really happy to
go see Amy's art at Harvard.
Yeah. I am going to get to see it, but yeah, no, it's fun and exciting.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I mean, what I hear is just like more art, like what say yes to more art.
Yeah.
One last question I have for you. Is there a piece of advice that you've gotten, or a saying or a mantra or something that you've heard that really resonates with you, that's helped you a lot?
Gosh, there are probably many, I think, along the way. I've probably written them down in some of the word drawings as well. Or like on my table, I cover my work table in craft paper, and I recently recovered it. But I saved a remnant of it over there, where I'll write down things that people have told me that I've read that have stood out to me in this moment. I don't know that I have a single one, like a singular standard, but there are just several things that I've said to myself over time, or that friends have said, or fellow artists have said to me, and that I just kind of hold dear, and they kind of pop up when you least expect them, but you most need them. Like they're sort of simple, like even one that a friend of mine said that other people may not agree with, but has helped me is, Amy, sometimes it doesn't look like it's going to work out on paper. I'm talking like the finances and the logistics and having two spaces of renting and work. And like, it doesn't look like it's going to work out, but it does. And you just have to have faith. And, I don't know that works for everybody, but it's up until now, it's helping me. And I think just, this idea of safety and like telling myself that I'm safe, like I got that from other people in my life who've like reminded themselves that. And so that's something that has helped me to feel like I can continue to pursue life, And otherwise, I mean, there are so many things that artists say and that writers say that are considerate and thoughtful, but my mind is blank in terms of what they are at the moment.
But I think those two examples are beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like I so appreciate that of like, sometimes it doesn't make sense on paper.
Yeah.
There's been like huge leaps that going to SVA, my parents didn't have a college fund. We took out a shit ton of loans. They still tell me the story about how they were like terrified of like, how the fuck are we going to pay for this? But then they saw my face light up, after taking the tour, and they're like, all right, we're just going to make it happen. But just in general, in life, sometimes it's like, yeah, it may not the math may not math, or it may, you may not be able to see everything clearly right now, but more will be revealed. Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes a lot of this and what you've done, like in your journey, is like these leaps of faith. Some big, some small, like some day to day, So I think that's super valuable, and safety. Absolutely. Just knowing at the end of the day, right? Like you were talking about before, like no one could come to a show or all of this could stop, or whatever. I don't know, blow up, who knows? But at the end of the day, you're going to be okay. Yeah. And that's something I tell myself too, that at the end of the day, if people hate what I do, or it blows up, or I failed, there's people who love me no matter what. Yeah. And I'm loved, and I'm going to be okay. Yeah.
And you love yourself. And I recognize too that not everybody can access that. And I don't want to make it seem like I could access this feeling of safety, or sure, it may not work out, but I'll try it anyway. Like these are not easy things. This is like taken many years. Again, that ship that slowly turns. Like it's taken a long time for me to begin to approach like, but maybe I can believe that I'm going to be safe. And then I think from there, you can like find ways, or I would like to continue to find ways to support other people, because not everybody has that feeling of safety enough to consider pursuing their dreams or what they want to do in life. I think that maybe it's not necessarily a luxury, because it is a ton of work and a lot of leaps of faith and scary, but in a sense it is a luxury sort of, and so I do recognize that. And I think it's important to try to, like our conversation is reminding me of the importance of being available to help other people get to a place where they can live what they're meant to live, that like say yes to those parts of themselves that they may not even be hearing yet,
Yeah. So. And it could look like anything.
Yeah, totally. It doesn't have to, it does look like anything and everything. We make up that fabric together, like this very weird, wonderful thing. Yes. That's what it is.
Well, Amy Decker, thank you so much. I adore you. I adore your artwork. Thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. And will you share with people how they can follow you or see your work or anything like that? How they can contact you if they want?
Well, Natalie, thank you so much. I have so much love for you, and I really appreciate your time and you coming to have this conversation with me and coming to the studio. And yes, thank you. I can give you my website, so I'll write that down. That's helpful. And then I also have an Instagram at Amy, Norad. It's my middle name and last initial. It's not the North American Aerospace Defense. I think it is. They're like, what is this? Amy NORAD, but it's Amy NORAD. And that I put a lot of work up there, and sort of will share about shows. I have the most recent show information up there. The work is up at Governor's Academy right now, up in Byfield, Massachusetts, which is just north of Boston. It will be up until mid-January. I want to say we take it down on the 12th. So if you happen to be in Byfield or Newburyport or Boston area and you want to stop by on the 11th, we're having a reception and a final discussion kind of before the show comes down. So there's that. And the Instagram is pretty reliable spot for anything other coming up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amy.
Yay.
Bye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining our podcast today. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you would consider liking, subscribing, and even leaving us a comment. This way, it will help us to keep the podcast alive and continue to bring you some really awesome interviews and nuggets of creative wisdom. So thank you again for checking us out. I'll see you next time.